My name is Brian Thiessen. I'm from British Columbia, Canada. I've spent well over a year and hundreds of hours, if not 1,000 hours or more, studying this program of smart meters that's going up globally. This is definitely a global issue. There will be some specifics to BC, British Columbia, in this presentation, but more so on the health side, this is universal. It's going to cover your program where you are. For you, those of you in BC, it's going to cover our program. So without further ado, the truth about smart meters. In this part, we're going to talk mostly about health, and we're going to get to that right now. So health, this is a primary concern for everybody on this smart meter fiasco. The health concerns are very real, and they are substantiated by doctors, by military, by universities, everything across the board over decades of time. We have to cover some basic fundamentals about the human body and why all these universities and military understand the problems with this with their studies. Your body's electrical. Electromagnetism and the foundation of life. These are the building blocks of life. They should not be ignored, and they are being ignored for profit. This is what we need to understand. When you send this electricity and these frequencies and pulses and microwaves into people's bodies, this is what you're compromising your electrical grid. The entire universe obeys the laws of electricity. This is not for peer review. This is 100% fact. The entire universe operates this way, so we can't say that humans don't have these properties, animals and anything else, water, whatever, doesn't have these properties, because the entire universe obeys its laws. Again, the Earth has its own electromagnetic field. You have your own electromagnetic field. Even trees. Trees are electrical. There's electrical properties in trees. They can test this, they can show this. Animals, everything. All the way down to the smallest bacteria, viruses. And we can even see here, your human cells have an electrical field as powerful as lightning bolts. On a volt per meter basis, it's actually more powerful than a lightning bolt, your human cells. So we can clearly establish this as fact. We obey these laws. Trillions of electrical connections in the human body. They're all over the place for every function. Me speaking right now, you listening right now, you watching this right now. Every time you breathe, the food you're digesting, everything is based on electrical functions and connections of the body. You can see here, just by this nice picture, your liver, your heart, your lungs, all of these are electrical pulses. Your spine is like your big antenna in your body that is sending out these pulses to your body to make sure all these functions go properly. You can see here, you have your own basic hertz, that's cycles per second. Your body right now, typically for you, it would be about in this 9 to 14 hertz range, relaxing, watching this video, learning, understanding. These are the frequencies. Your cells are human antenna. Your cells don't have any choice but to receive the frequencies that are blasting out of these phones, these smart meters, cell towers, all day long into your body. Your cells don't understand this stuff. They have no comprehension. Neither does your immune system. So this pushes your cells into a state of electrical failure. And electrical failure is the disease. This is why so many people get sick from these devices. You're not compatible with microwave radiation. That's a simple fact. So what do? We start buying all these cell phones and we put these billions of hertz directly up to our brain. This is just up until 2009. The sales are actually going to be way higher than this. So this is part of the problem. We can see massive increases of cell phone subscribers and all this other type of Wi-Fi wireless technology. So your brain, 8 hertz. Most of you will have these in your home. Most of you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these phones. 6 billion hertz directly up to the side of your head, and they're going into your brain. Now you're a part of an electrical equation that you have no business being in. You do not want to microwave radiate your brain. These phones are particularly bad. This is what we can see here. You can see this graphic display of what's happening. The microwaves don't stop at the phone. The microwaves are required to carry the voice of the phone so you can speak to your friend or your relatives. This is what happens. It goes directly into the phone and passes through there and into your brain, and it vibrates all your cells 6 billion times a second, give or take. Some is 2.3, 928 million. It depends on the type of phone that you have. But anything over 8 is probably going to be an issue, let alone 6 billion, 3 billion, 2 billion, 900 million. They say, Health Canada, FCC, all these guys that regulate this stuff, no heat equals no effect. We'll talk about that soon. So you can see here, what about all the people out there? This might include you. Now you're microwaving mercury amalgam fillings inside your mouth. All the people with the buzzing, clicking, ringing, tingling in ears, you have this issue. This might be from your cell phone, your cordless phones, because you're vibrating that. The least protected spot on the body is the eye. Some of you guys wearing glasses. This is stuff you need to take into consideration, which is backed by the military documents. But you do not want to be microwaving mercury. You do not want to have metal in your mouth either if this is something that you're going to be doing. And even if you're not doing it, you have all this stuff around you. So your body's being like a big antenna with this type of stuff in your body. Hip replacements, that type of thing. Here we can see here from microwave exposures. They did this to chick embryos. This is the results. Mutations. You have all kinds of problems. Twisted beaks, messed up legs. Now this is what people are putting up to their brains at massive amounts of higher exposure than this all day long. People on their cell phone an hour, 2, 3 hours a day. Wi-Fi. So this is a big deal. This is causing mutations far below the safe limits with electrically stimulating, just like you do to your brains if you use these devices. Why is that important? Why do we care about chick embryos? Because we, as a species, our females, also have their eggs inside them. They're putting these cell phones, they're putting the laptops on top of these eggs. They're stimulating these eggs with electricity, with microwaves. This is not a good idea because we can see the problems that happen with other animals. We can see Wi-Fi, cell phones, all these things, effects on sperm. Over and over, study after study is showing this because we're sending electricity right into sperm. Now, any scientist is going to tell you that if you're having problems with sperm, if you're using a chemical, if you're using anything and it's causing a problem with sperm, you better watch out, you better be starting to look at what's happening. And this is what we see happening over and over again, all the time. All these studies are coming out constantly showing this. DNA fragmentation. So then what else do we do? The same thing. Now we got these phones in our pockets. We got these clip-on baby monitors in our pockets. We're sending these frequencies directly into the womb and into these unborn children. It's a very dangerous situation. We also have the laptop computers right by the eggs and also even on the babies that are inside the womb or the baby that's inside the womb. And the people have no idea this is happening. Then in hospitals for tracking, they want to put RFID chips on the kids so they can microwave track the kids in case someone wants to remove them from the hospital in order to keep them safe. So we can see full-scale, full-spectrum exposure to microwaves constantly and always from even before birth. Then we move forward, we see the baby monitors. Microwaving, you see the concentric circles at the bottom there showing how the microwaves are going to blast out directly into the baby even while it's trying to sleep and do all these other things. We see in Wi-Fi in schools. Schools are already removing Wi-Fi. Some countries are totally taking it out of schools. Canada, definitely lacking. United States, some other countries. You can see what happens. The pulses are going directly into the children's brain. And we wonder why about some of these learning disabilities and all this stuff. We can see what happens. We can see in this Yale study. ADHD are caused by cell phone exposure in the womb. They have reason to believe this. They're doing this on rats, things like this, repeatable results. That's going to be something that we talk about. Cell phone use in pregnancy may cause behavioral disorders in offspring. We can see this moving forward all the time. Brain cancer is leading cause of cancer death in young people. Well, what do we think here? We got 2, 3-year-old kids, even before that, exposing themselves to microwave radiation. I'm not going to say pesticides and other types of things aren't an issue here. What I am saying is we cannot rule this out, microwave radiating children's brains. Thousands of kilometers are proposed in the Clean Energy Act in British Columbia. Some people all over the planet are going to have miles and miles and kilometers of line installed for these new hydroelectric projects, whatever it may be. You can see here the light bulbs, the tube lighting like you're going to have in your schools or office buildings. That is leftover electricity. Those are not plugged in. That is just absorbing electricity from the power lines. So we can see a human body would be very similar to that. Exposure to EMFs of strengths experienced under power lines can disrupt the body's nocturnal production of melatonin. You need melatonin. You need that pineal gland and those other glands in your brain, specifically your immune system, to be operating appropriately. This is in 33 years of data of 35,000 kids diagnosed with cancer. This is the UK government finding this stuff out. Taking a look here. Is there any difference between these light bulbs and these kids? There's almost zero difference. One's alive, one's basically dead, but one is having electricity pumped directly through it, and so is the other. We can see this with kids around power lines. They're conductors. You're causing induction in the bodies, which is the same type of thing, except slightly different. When you talk about power lines versus cell phones, it's the same type of thing, causing induction in these little conductors of kids, adults, whoever it may be. We see the risk to children, adults, 10-year-olds, 5-year-olds. Their skulls aren't fully developed. Their immune systems aren't fully developed. Health Canada FCC testing is done on a mannequin that represents a 6'2", 220-pound male, and they're not understanding how this works. You can see how the microwaves penetrate directly into the brain of children. Imagine those little eggs we talked about earlier. Now we move up even further into life, our office buildings. We can see all this here, all the exposures that are going to be coming off those Wi-Fi, plus all these guys walking into work with cell phones and everything else. Then we can see the smart meters, how those are going to work with the same types of frequencies, 928 million hertz, 2.4 billion hertz, going out into people. This is going to be an issue with the router collection stations here. You can see in purple, blasting out all day, every day. Now we see it on a larger scale over cities. This is just for smart meters. This has nothing to do with cell towers and everything else. These are your cell towers. Some of you may not have seen these before or looked up and understand what they are. Now you know this is a cell phone tower. These are cell phone masts. These are blasting microwave radiation into people all day long. This is why your cell phone works. It is sending the signal to your phone and, of course, directly into your brain and into bystanders that are walking around or doing whatever they are in their cities. This is just Canada. These are the cell phone towers just in Canada, and this is, I believe, 2 years ago already. It is much worse than this. This does not include the smart meter routers. These things are everywhere, and they say this is natural. It's just like the sun, or the sun's even worse than cell phone towers. We're just doing natural things. This is not natural. We're blasting radiation into people. This is not a natural thing at all. So here we have, this is what's protecting you. This specific test right here. This is called a SAM, or a specific anthropomorphic mannequin. What this does is, it is the testing mechanism that they use with this rod in the top here that measures the soapy liquid inside the mannequin for heat effects. 1 kilogram must heat at 1 degree in 6 minutes, and if that doesn't happen, you are safe for exposure for everything. Why I'm showing the 4G network, now you're actually going to have to get blasted with 2 separate towers in order to make that 4G network work. So you can see the side of the brain in color there. This is what's going to be happening, and this is what's kept you safe this whole time, this Safety Code 6 and the FCC standards. If you're not heating up 1 kilogram, 1 degree in 6 minutes, nothing's happening to you, denying all the electrical properties of your body and brain. They say they don't want to test on humans because that wouldn't be ethical. Well, here they have them, Cellular Baby, marketing cell phones directly to babies. And they say they don't want to do this because of ethics. And we already have 5 to 6 billion people with cell phones now using these things, and they don't want to do experiments on humans. Here we see here, ethics. They can just use the animal test results, but they're not doing that. They're just saying, oh, it's not ethical to test on them, so what are we going to do? We'll just test on them. So this is what it boils down to. We always hear that there's 2 sides to this argument, and that's very much true. One side accepts that the body has electrical properties, and microwave radiating people for life will have effects, changing DNA, as we will see. The other side says, we'll just do some short-term tests for a few minutes, and if the body doesn't heat up 1 degree per kilogram, then everything's safe. That's a big issue. We can see that all the other stuff, the long-term cumulative effects, are ignored. Naval Medical Research Institute, they were figuring this out. 2,300 studies. We talked about this, the ADD, the repeatable results, lack of concentration, loss of memory. We're microwave radiating our children in schools. All of them have ADD. They all need Ritalin. They all need drugs, a big moneymaker. What's the number 3? Guys carrying around the cell phones in the pocket. We can see here they found that it caused impotence. Altered pituitary function, hyperthyroidism, thyroid enlargement, altered adrenal cortex activity. All these immune system functions, these glands that we need, people putting the phones directly up to their heads and having that stimulate the thyroid, pituitary gland, pineal gland. Headaches, insomnia. People get the meters put in and all very quickly have headaches, insomnia, all these other types of problems. Matches the military documents. Your pulse microwave radiating these people. They can't sleep. There's problems with the central nervous system. Changes in the operation of implanted cardiac pacemakers. Problems with the hearing, as we saw in the other studies. Decreased fertility to sterility. This page is the one that kind of really got to me. Altered menstrual activity. Altered fetal development. Decreased lactation in nursing mothers. Altered blood flow rate. All these people having heart problems, heart palpitations. We can see that any number of problems are caused by this, but this number 9 in particular, we talked about that in part 1. We talked about repeatable results, fertility to sterility. 10 years after this was done, in '86, we can alter the behavior of tissues, cells, organs, and whole organisms, meaning people, meaning you. You can cause up to 6 times higher fetus mortality and birth defects in laboratory animals, and we are putting our phones right by our reproductive organs. Pregnant mothers are using laptops, cell phones, kids are in schools with the Wi-Fi, and Health Canada, all these agencies, the telecoms say there's no effects. We beg to differ. More from the Army. 100% of the population will be susceptible. Now, why is that? Because 100% of the population is electrical in nature. So when you microwave radiate people, you stimulate them and cause problems. Everything from disruption of concentration, again we're seeing that, muscle spasms, loss of consciousness even. Environmental Protection Agency, we're always asked, credible, where are all these studies? There's not enough science for the people that are against this stuff to prove their point. 3,627 studies. This is just one page of over 500. This is just on the central nervous system. So we can see all this stuff is coming to an alignment. Korean War veterans, more exposure to microwaves, more death, more disease, more cancer. Decade after decade, study after study, repeatable results. This is the definition of science itself. DNA breakage from cell phone levels, microwave radiation at so-called SAR levels. All this DNA breakage. We're talking about breaking DNA, the fundamental building blocks of life. Again, repeatable results. Canadian Human Rights Commission. Memory and attention of school children. Think about that before you send your school to be Wi-Fi radiated. Headache, dizziness, irritability, fatigue, microwave hearing. Repeatable over and over. Now look at the levels. Your smart meters are going to be going anywhere from the lower level. Some of them even go all the way up over 10, even 100 microwatts per square centimeter. And the safety limit, the limit at which you heat up at, is 1,000. And well below that, we can see these problems happening to people. Irreversible sterility in mice is another one. We'll look at that in a minute. 8,000 research articles on animals. Suppression of the immune system. Repeatable. Cows, cats, dogs. Why? Because they are electrical in nature as well. Repeatable results. Talking about bees in the previous one and now in this one. Doing studies from microwave radiating bees. Everyone's wondering why the bees are dying. I'm sure there's other factors involved here, but we cannot rule this one out. Microwave radiating bees. See on the left-hand side the studies they did. Problems with the colony. The bees don't return. They can't, the immune system suppression. We talk about varroa mites. All this stuff is happening to them. We see these massive collapses in the colonies. It's not time to let's see what's happened. It's not time to try. We want to reduce these problems in our environment and be sure that our bees can survive, because if they don't survive, we don't survive. Take a look now. Remember, Florida was always worried about that, about the fruit production and everything. Well, maybe we could consider that all these microwave radiation sources blasting these bees is an issue. Texas also. California. Michigan, all these places that are big producers. We can see this. This is just cell towers, nothing to do with anything else, and these are older maps. So we can see what's happening. We're pulsing these microwaves through these bees. They can't find their way back to the hive. They have these immune system problems like every other species of every other animal out there. And now we're going to add these smart meters on top of everything else. This is not required and not safe. Millions per day left out. These pulses, they always say 3 to 4 times a day. These pulses are going to be in the hundreds of thousands of pulses per day. And even in just here, you see a few houses, you're going to start to get to 1 million, 2, 3, 5 million pulses per day in this small area. You extrapolate that out to a year and a lifetime, that's a big problem. How many people have this? How many people have these banks of meters on the side of their apartment or in their complex, or even 4, even 5, 10, 12? Why are we doing this to people? Look at these nice analog meters doing the exact same job, accurate. Now we want to microwave radiate people just for whatever reason. It doesn't make sense. Here we have the numbers. Forced in court, PG&E, 190,000 pulses a day. This is the home-to-home or meter-to-meter chatter and communication. There's absolutely no reason for this, or is there? We'll talk about that in some of the other segments. Texas Public Utility testimony. Routers cover 125 square mile area. We also have the smart meters, 5 square miles. You should all YouTube check out Richmond, BC Smart Meter Constant Microwave Emissions just to get a look at what these routers do. 125 square miles. We'll take a look just even at Vancouver. Vancouver to Hope, a very far distance, that's only 85 miles. We would be able to blast from Richmond, Vancouver, stuff on the island just with the routers. And this doesn't even include the cell phone towers. Everything else, all these other sources of radiation that we're putting into our bodies now, just so a bunch of guys can make money. I want you to take a look as well as the YouTube listings at the top of the screen, but this is how this sort of works. 14,000 might be the house that's kind of far away. The 190,000 will be the one that's closer to the collector. That's going to get all the pulses from everywhere. All these pulses running through these houses, your bodies, through your wiring. This is how this system works. Nobody's being told who's the collector hubs, who's closest to it. They just put this stuff up and let it ride. This stuff's approved by BC's provincial health officer. This is the gentleman, Perry Kendall, says there's clearly some biological effects. But let's go ahead and do it anyway. Let's microwave radiate children, pregnant women. It doesn't matter. We know there's effects, but let's just do it and see what happens. This is one of the guys among 2 that BC Hydro says, don't worry. Perry Kendall said it's okay. These are the problems we have when we leave this stuff in the hands of a small group of people, guys who have no idea what they're talking about, like John Blatherwick. John Blatherwick says, if you truly are harmed by this level of radiation, you can't live in a major city. That's a pretty intense statement. Recalling our military documents, 100% of the population would be susceptible because we're all electrical. Please watch the YouTube at the bottom of the screen there. You'll see this interview with John Blatherwick where he admits he has no idea what these meters do. So we get a good idea just looking at this. This is happening all over the globe. This is what happens. Public safety minister now works for TELUS. The former industry minister now works for Bell. Independent testing, this is what done. Carl Reardon, who works for PlanetWorks. This is the guy who did the test for BC Hydro. Former director and general manager of Motorola. Look at all the other stuff here. Of course, it's going to be a perfect independent test that shows no effects and no problems. You can see here in BC Hydro's literature, no risk, according to PlanetWorks Consulting. Of course there's no risk. Health Canada researcher gets funds from Motorola as well. Very interesting. Wonder how that's going to work out for everybody. Everything's always going to be safe, of course. These things are so safe, in fact, that in California they're removing them due to the health effects. Same problems we saw in all our military documents, all over the place. Radio safe, this is what they say. Well, how come the court ruled the Vatican liable for causing higher risk of cancer around its radio towers if radio is so safe? Toxic effects on ovaries, 75% mortality rate, irreversible infertility, DNA damage, abnormal sperm cells, 90% mortality rate. This is the stuff we see from animal studies that have been happening forever, and we're told all this stuff is safe. We better pay attention when this type of stuff is happening, especially any scientist will tell you when you see problems with sperm cells, you better wake up. After decades of research, there are no demonstrable health or environmental effects from exposure to low-level radio frequency signals. What are all the studies we just saw there before the military? Of course there are problems, but it's too much money to be made to admit that they are problems. And also, for thermal effects and non-thermal effects. They just ride that till the end of time, because if they don't, the profits disappear and the liability appears. Look at this, just talking about 50 smart meters at the 100,000 per day pulse rate, 365 days. We're talking about billions of pulses per year, per person, just from one type of smart meter. What did the Korean War veteran studies tell us? More exposure equals more disease and more death. And these types of rulings from Health Canada and the FCC allow this stuff to happen to our kids and ourselves. Pesticides, GMO foods, giant tumors, Health Canada establishing the track record of these types of guys. The FDA saying, oh, all this stuff is safe. No, there's nothing to worry about. Look at the stuff that happens. Look at all the other types of rat studies that they've said, oh, this stuff is safe. Don't worry about it. No effects. I think those are effects. Looking further at Health Canada's track record, mercury fillings, tobacco, lead, DDT, asbestos, chlordane, trans fats, thalidomide, there's piles of this stuff. And we are trusting their track record to say, you can microwave radiate your children all day and for life, and it's safe and there's no effects. Are we trusting these people? Do we actually believe a word that they say when they probably maimed, hurt, caused death in more people than any other agency in Canada combined? And this is what we're allowed to do to our kids now. This is what's happening to kids all over the planet, Canada, USA, because we're being told this stuff is safe simply because these little babies aren't heating up 1 degree per kilogram. Look at all these microwave radiation sources. They don't test them combined, they test them one by one, and if they're not heating, everything is safe. Look at what we're doing to our kids. 29 years before a woman will have their first baby, we're sending microwave radiation directly into the eggs. These kids are born with the eggs that they're going to carry for life, around 400 or so of them, and we send this stuff into them, and we're told all that radiation is safe and it has no effects. I don't believe that, and the military studies don't show that, and none of the other studies do either. What's our alternatives? Everyone says, we're going back to the Stone Age. What's wrong with you people? Nothing's wrong with us. We like keeping our kids safe. I think that's a pretty good idea. Let's keep the frequencies inside the cords. Keep electricity where it belongs, out of our bodies. Plugged in computers, hardwired analog meters, hardwired phones. Once we do that, we're out of these electrical equations that compromise the electricity of our body and put us into electrical failure and disease. That is our alternatives. Our alternative is safety. Thanks very much for watching this video. Please contact me and check out the website. Take care. Welcome to another segment of The Truth About Smart Meters. This one's going to have a slightly more British Columbia feel. However, you are going to understand, and perhaps you would decide to take the time to do the research about what's happening in your area, because it's exactly the same. It's a carbon copy all over the planet. Canada, America, Europe, doesn't matter, it's the same. So let's move into some issues. Privacy. Big issue with the smart meters. Basically, privacy and smart meters don't mix. You will not have privacy anymore. Every single thing you do every single day is to be stored, tracked, used to be monetized, to make money, to sell data, to keep data, for guys to make manufacturing systems, to track all this stuff. Trillions of dollars at stake here. This is part of why they're moving forward this. You're going to hear stuff like big data, the cloud. As you move forward and you do a little bit of research, you'll see, and the utilities are central to this, and they're going to make piles of money off it. That's why they put these things through, no matter what happens with health or fires or anything, because there's too much money to be made. Kamloops, Bunker Road, Data Storage Center. Everyone in BC is wondering what's going on with these data storage centers. How about in the UK? How about in Utah? All over the place. What are they doing with this data? This data will be sold, tracked, and monetized. This is a massive marketing thing. They can sell this to any type of company. This is part of why they're putting chips in all your cards, your clothes, food products, you name it. They want to know what's going on with every item at all times, because that has real-time tracking of everything, and that's a lot of money. Here we see, just in BC alone, one of TELUS's data center customers is going to be, of course, BC Hydro. We can see that, and look at how these guys, Itron, BC Hydro, and TELUS, all working together. What this means is the public has been made to buy all of this equipment on behalf
of Itron and TELUS. So we've subsidized the millions and billions of dollars these guys are going to make off of this through BC Hydro. This is why this is hundreds and hundreds of dollars a meter, data storage, all this stuff we're not being told about, which is going to cripple the economy with massive rate increases. You're seeing the term again, cloud computing. Here we are. Customer of TELUS is BC Hydro, storing data, pulling data out of your house, your every move, you name it. This is not paranoia. This is very real. This is exactly where the industry is going. If you take the time, you'll find all of this data yourself. What else is in this for the utilities? Unforeseen incremental revenue stream. This will not be incremental. This will be massive. Look at all this demographic data, satellite image, financial data, appliance data, social behavior data, behavioral data now, energy behavior patterns. Everything you can imagine will be tracked, stored, and monetized. Who would want to sell and own your data? Well, of course, Corix group of companies. TELUS, all these guys. This is just BC people, and this is why these guys have legislated this stuff into being to put money directly back into their pockets. Wherever, what state you're in, doesn't matter. This is the same thing. In compliance with privacy laws in BC Hydro is. So what do they do to make this work? They just change all the privacy laws. All the guys in office just said, well, we'll just change the privacy laws, so therefore the private information can now be sold. What used to be private is now not private anymore, and it's BC Hydro's data. I'll talk about that. The BC Power Authority Act. You guys need to take a very close look at this, specifically in BC. Act and regulations, the power to amalgamate in any manner with a firm or person. We own, amalgamate, Azores, your data. And pretty much everything else. Acquire all the property, assets, or undertaking of a firm or person. Amalgamates in any manner with a firm or person. This case means your data. The authority is not required to obtain any approval, authorization, permit, or under the Utilities Commission Act in connection with the agreement or any actions taken in accordance, and so on. Basically what they're saying is, we don't need your permission for anything. We don't believe any laws apply to us, and your rights will be determined by the IPPs, which is the independent power producers or utilities, and the guys who want your data to sell for profit. Basically, the law is no longer law, money is law, and that's all that's happened. Paranoid or educated on the topic. This is the CIA talking about. Items of interest will be located, identified, monitored, and remotely controlled. What are those items of interest, by the way? That's you. That's your kids. This is what they're talking about. They're using the smart appliances, the cloud computing. They can know what everyone is doing at all times. We're not going to get into who they is, because you should know who that is by now. Whoever wants your data to make money off it is the they. So they can see through the walls using wireless routers, wireless technology. Now I want you to think about what this guy has in his hand, this guy with police on his back. And the guys, of course, all this stuff is just to protect you, right? Of course it is. They can see through the walls. They can generate a picture of the inside of your house using this stuff. Just think radar on steroids. This is what's happening. This is Popular Science magazine. This is how they make the cloud. They have all these microwaves around. There's not one space or little crack or crevice that's not going to have microwave radiation all over the place. Meter to meter, router to router, appliance to appliance, all of it. So there's not going to be a crack or anything anywhere that doesn't have radiation. That's what allows them to keep track of anything. Remember when we were talking about 190,000 pulses a day? We need to have a stable cloud for them in order for them to track all this stuff. It's data worth billions. Let's take a look at something. Popular Science. It's possible to detect a person's breathing rate by surrounding him with radio waves. Now let's look back at what the CIA, the top head of the CIA said. Items of interest will be located, identified, monitored, and remotely controlled. I want you to think about that. I want you to do your own research on this stuff. Part of this is to get this data, and part of this is to know everything that's going on in anyone's household. And this, remember, you might recall this picture. This is exactly what we were talking about. They're risking everybody, the health, in order to make this money. They don't care about anything. They don't care about fires, health, nothing. It's all about making money, making this data, selling these units, and doing this for a massive amount of profit. Now, have you thought about that? Every house is going to have this wireless router on it. That is your smart meter. That is one of the top purposes for this little device, and why they're rushing so fast is because they can see in every house, they can generate a picture in every house. Look at that blue outline. Wherever the cloud is, wherever the signals are going, they can generate a picture, and that's what's showing up on that little guy's camera there. This is one of the main reasons behind the smart meters, for spying technology and also to sell data for massive profits. Here's one of the other ones. Take a look at this. This is a courtesy of a video from Tom Wilson. I urge you guys to watch this video. It's very good, but look at all the big name companies involved here and the billions and trillions of dollars at stake. Of course, this is why this is happening. It is beyond obvious when you see the names here on this sheet of paper. Security. Is a wireless grid secure from hackers? You can see all the time. You just surf around and you can find yourself. NATO, CIA, Pentagon, all these guys are being hacked all the time. Anything can be hacked except, of course, an analog meter. That costs $50 and not $500. Texas College hacks drone in front of the Department of Homeland Security, and you are telling me that smart meters will not be hacked. You can see it time and again in all the places. CNN Money, how hackers can steal electricity. They've already figured out to steal electricity through a smart meter. And this smart meter was supposed to save us money because it wouldn't be able to be hacked into or the lines cut and stealing power and all this stuff. White hat hacker tested. This is what BC Hydro says. We had white hat hackers come in and they tested the grid and the system and everything was fine and they couldn't find a way around it and we've got it all set up. First of all, that's absolutely impossible. No security expert, David Chalk, all these guys, they will tell you flat out, you cannot say anything is safe from hacking because anything can be hacked and it is hacked at any point in time. BC Hydro says this will reduce theft $100 million a year, saving money for ratepayers. They've already been able to find out ways to show absolutely no power consumption at all, faking readings. There's a lot of people that use a lot of power in BC, and for the people in BC, they knew who I'm talking about. You don't think that they're going to figure this stuff out? Rewriting the smart meter power bill. Energy data shows what movies customers were watching. Remember the CIA stuff? We talked about that. They can find out right down to whether you've burned or purchased your DVD in your DVD player. That's how sensitive this technology is. Cyber attacks up 400% since 2011. Everyone should be feeling safe about that. Here, we have the FBI, accountability. Let's talk about accountability. BC Hydro always uses that word. Smart grid electrical meters altered to steal electricity. Hacks likely to spread. This is the FBI. Why doesn't BC Hydro tell the FBI how they should conduct their business if they've got it all figured out? Trust BC Hydro. They were just hacked this summer. Hackers infiltrate Calgary-based technology firm, including oil pipelines and major public utilities, supplier of control systems for electrical power grids, municipal water systems, and so on. This was just on September 28th of 2012. Why don't these guys know what's going on? Perhaps they should be calling BC Hydro and figuring out how they can protect themselves from hacking, since BC Hydro knows but nobody else does. Entire grids. Another software maker is hacked. Telvent this time. Over and over, we accessed project files related to a control system used in portions of the electrical grid, and we are putting in these smart meters. It makes absolutely no sense. None of this needs to happen. It's a money-making scheme, and we're putting a lot of things at risk, including for war, terrorism, countries wanting to get back. Well, what's the best way to get back at somebody? Shut off their electricity grid. And this is exactly what these utilities are now putting everyone vulnerable position in order to make piles of money. Thank you very much for watching this one as well. NoBCSmartMeters@gmail.com. Check out the website www.bc-freedom.com. There's a lot of other good info out there. This is just a little bit of it. Thank you very much.
Welcome to another segment of The Truth About Smart Meters. We're going to talk economics here. I highly suggest you watch also the privacy and security, because these two things very much tie together. There's a lot going on here. We're going to talk about energy harvesting. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, how the data is going to be sold, who's going to be making the money, all that. And of course, as we always know, follow the money. Just going to give you a small example, just British Columbia alone, wherever your jurisdiction is, this type of stuff is going to be happening, particularly in the States where you have these massive piles of stimulus money going to this. This is just money going directly into the chip makers, to the utilities pockets. But in BC's case, all these guys on the board of BC Hydro, all these guys, members or really good friends with, and you can find out their lines of communication and groupings with all these guys. If you just do your research, these guys are the ones that made the decisions to start these programs so they could basically funnel money into their pockets. So you got the government and the utility hand in hand, along with the papers. Now also you can see the company installing the meters is Corix. These guys are all shareholders in the company Corix, so they just funneled money directly in their pockets, and they made a massive return, and they're going to continue to make massive returns installing these meters, software upgrades, whatever you want to call it. It's a money flow cash cow directly to them. See the link at the bottom of the screen if you want to learn more about that. BC Hydro or Corix Hydro. Look at already, we see the infiltration of Corix. Well, BC Hydro is not going to be privatized. What will be privatized is the profits. What will be public will be all the losses, the build-outs, the buying the meters, the installations. Mandatory meters equals mandatory smart appliances, which means mandatory profits for appliance makers. They were just deciding to create a market for all this new gadgets and gizmos, Cisco, the chip makers, everybody. They just wanted to make billions of dollars making something new, and they got it. You can see billions of dollars, 500% profit increase in 4 years. This is just purely, specifically, and totally only about money. Smart appliance sales to reach 45 million units annually by 2020. This is only 8 years away. This is billions and trillions of dollars we're talking about here. Where the big money will be in the smart grid? No, it's not the meters. Of course it's not the meter. They say here, bottom line, we're going to need a lot of sensors and monitors, and somebody is going to make billions selling them. And they're going to make that off who? The taxpayer and the ratepayer, and they're going to funnel all the money into their pockets. This is what it is. Look at all of these companies getting a piece of the pie, getting a piece of your wallet, the government coffers, the provincial, the state coffers. That's all that's going on here. I want you to check out a video by Tom Wilson called Smart Grid Risk. It's a very good video. He explains this extremely well. I advise you to check it out. But take a look at these companies. This is all this is about. All these guys making money. Top most profitable industries. Take a look at that. Network and other communications equipment. Internet services and retailing. Of course, it's just about money. Itron, TELUS, BC Hydro. Already we can see the government in collusion with TELUS and Itron and these manufacturers. It is siphoning money out of your pocket and giving it to them. There's no other way to describe this. Here's going to be the biggest economic impact. Look at the corrosion, radiation effects on corrosions. Massive higher amounts of corrosion. I talk about this in the fire video, which you should also check out so you can understand that equation and those economic impacts for our firefighters, for our households. Think about how many of these types of connections and all the metal and everything you have in your house. This is an issue big time. Look at this stuff. You can't even begin to describe what's going to be happening to the grid, what's going to be happening to households, all this radiation that's being blasted out all day long. But of course, that's going to be big money for these guys because they're going to have to be constantly replacing all these meters, all these hubs, all these collectors, routers, all this stuff. Here we see, take a look at what your house is going to be bombarded with, meter to meter, directly at your meter base, corrosion into that. You're going to be having to replace that. All your appliances are going to microwave themselves out. All your household, that thing you've been paying your whole life with your mortgage to try and deal with, is just going to be zapped by this stuff. So you have constant repairs, maintenance problems. All the property owners, property managers, apartment buildings, sky rises, everything. You guys got to start thinking about this stuff. So Gary Murphy, his job, he doesn't really care about safety as he claims in the papers and all this stuff. He is out for one set of people and one set of people only. His pocketbook and the pockets of Cisco, Hydro, Itron, and TELUS. You see that quote we saw earlier. None of these smart meter guys care about anything but the piles of money they're going to steal from you. Conservation and savings. Hydro, they always keep saying we better have the smart meter program, otherwise the grid is going to go down. Well, the grid would only go down if you microwave it to death. Hydro demand growth at 50% over the next 20 years. Let's talk about that. And we're already exporting $2.6 billion worth of extra electricity to the USA that we're not even getting paid for. So you BC people better take a look at this. 50,000 gigawatt hours a year for the last 5 years. This is not about demand increasing. Look at this, billions of dollars, $12 billion in the Clean Energy Act. We're not even allowed to know where the money's going because, of course, it's going directly into their pockets. We're building billions of dollars across Canada to funnel hydro down to the United States. Hydro, we're not even going to see any profits. This is all for private profit, but we get to deal with the build-out. The BC government gives away the public's rivers for free and gets them to finance the facilities and commit to purchase the power from them at exorbitant rates. And at the end of that process, the private company owns the river rights and the infrastructure and can sell their power to whoever they want for whatever they want, forever. What a deal for us. We get to pay for everything. They get all the profits. We get to do all the maintenance. That's what I'm talking about. Privatizing profits. Public gets the losses. Here are all these IPPs. All this power is going right down to the United States. So all of our land is going to be starting to get destroyed for mining and what other types of purposes and jacking up the power rates because we're going to have to compete with what California and all these other states are paying. We have the lowest rates in North America, and this is going to compromise us and basically destroy our economy with jacking up the hydro rates. This is all private land. They own all this stuff now. 800 claims. This is just run-of-river IPP projects. Buy high, sell low. How is this scam going to work? 50%. We talked about that. Site C is going to just be enough power to do the LNG. Northern Gateway Pipeline, for example, that's going to cost 200,000 homes of power needed. Kinder Morgan expansion, mines and all the pulp mills are getting heritage rates, billions per year in guaranteed subsidized contracts. Ratepayers are also going to have to pay that. We better understand this is going to bankrupt BC, and this is all going to IPPs, and it's going to ruin the province and put us in debt. That's what this is. We're buying power for 12.5, selling it for 4 cents. Who's going to make up the difference, and how is it going to do that? That's going to be you. Here's the deal. This is how it works. Here's the flow chart. They buy, sell, and at the end, they pass on all the losses to you. This is by accident, or what else is going on here? What if rate increases can't cover the massive cost overruns? They just take it out of the pension plan. Authorization to borrow from the Canada Pension Plan. So as they keep going into debt and into debt and into debt, they can just take the money out of the pensions to cover all the losses. Amazing. This is the stuff that's directly out of the Power Authority Act. You can find this by yourselves. The two-tier partnership. We get all the liabilities, they get all the profit. We talked about that. Wi-Fi enabled. Now, first of all, this means that your smart appliance is going to microwave all your food, but they talk about, oh, this is going to help you keep track. It's not about you keeping track. It's about them keeping track. They're going to know everything in your fridge. They're going to have this little TV screen to sell you whatever they want. This is perfect. This is exactly what industry wanted. Sell the fridges. The grocery store is going to compete for the advertising space. Corix and BC Hydro and TELUS can sell that to them. It's a massive profit-making scheme. Now, just extrapolate that out globally. BC Hydro debt will balloon to $5 billion. We're already billions of dollars in debt. We have 28 different deferral accounts, and we're going ahead with this program. Of course we are, because the pensions are going to backstop the debt. It's guaranteed money for the banks and everyone else. And of course, Hydro is paying their bonuses still for non-existent profit. Auditor General is finding all this stuff. People in BC should be losing their minds over this. I don't know what's happening, but there's billions of dollars disappeared, and it's going to end up coming out of our pensions. They're talking about us paying extra fees to opt out. Why am I paying an extra fee when I want the 40 to 50 year meter that costs $50 versus the 5-year meter that costs $500? Why should I have to pay an extra fee? None of this should be happening. We're not even talking about data storage, the pulses coming out of the meters. Who should be paying to opt out? This should be an opt-in program. The citizens should have a say, like everywhere else. UK pilot project, not about conservation at all. They might not even have much effect on energy. I know how to shut my lights off. I don't need a computer to do that. I know how to conserve energy. I'm still going to have to use energy anyway. I still have to shower and do all that stuff, do my dishes. So this stuff means nothing. Meters don't change anything. Another pilot project. This is Connecticut. No savings. How profitable is it for a private industry for you to use less of their product? Is this about saving or profiting? Why would they put a device on your house? One of the most powerful and profitable industries, why would they put anything on your house that would steal money from them? This is not about taking their money. It's about taking your money and giving it to them. Ratepayers will see rates jump. You can see this all over the globe, particularly in BC, massive bill increases. Where's this money going? Straight to the power producers' pockets. And what about these 5, 10, 15, 20% little incremental increases that people aren't even aware about? Rising prices equals rising private profits. That's all this program is about, all the way up and down the board. Energy harvesting. People aren't talking about this. They don't understand this. Intel focuses, that's one of their focuses, harvesting free energy. Where's that energy going to come from? RF energy. Converting the pulses back into sellable power that they can put out on the grid over and over and generate billions of dollars of profit. This is free power that they can sell back to you, and you pay for the pulses that are coming out of your meter and pay for all the power to power the grid, and then they can sell it off. Don't think this isn't happening. These guys know this. You're charging cell phones with body heat, all this stuff. You guys better do your research and understand this equation. You don't think these guys have any idea about the power of that type of technology? Ambient energy, kinetic energy, reharvesting RF energy. Take a look at this antenna. Take a look at all these pulses that are going up all day, every day. Again, I'm advising you, 190,000 pulses. Why would a meter do something like that? You can make your own conclusions. It does make the cloud. What if they're harvesting this energy and selling it back to everybody? Remember we talked about this? What would be the possibility? This is just 50 houses, 8 billions of pulses a year. Billions of pulses a year just from that, let alone everything else. You extrapolate it, that's a lot of free power to sell back to people. Thank you very much for your time. I really want you to take a look into all those issues. I'm happy you watched this. See me at the website. Send me an email. Thank you. Welcome to The Truth About Smart Meters. Today we're going to talk about the most immediate and catastrophic threat to your home and your well-being, the potentiality of causing injury or death or damage to your property, and that is, of course, fires. Smart meter fires are prevalent all over the globe. They're happening all over the place right now. We're going to talk about that. We're going to show some examples, and we're going to explain exactly how and why these fires can do and will happen, and maybe of the potential that may be on the side of your house right now. Let's start off in Philadelphia. PECO, the utility of Philadelphia, has suspended the smart meter installation after fire. We have already right now the installers confessing to the meters causing fires. As it says, as Mr. Scott Cummings was one of the installers, it was causing some fires. Now we have more fires after the halt. We have smart meter burns up on the side of a house. We have the total running up to 26, and the fire officials admitting now that the home was scorched by PECO smart meter. You can see the damage in all of these photos. It's very clear what's happening. The last count was up to 29. This will be continuing. Only in 180,000 installs that happened, there's already been 29 fires, and the probability is high that there was more, which would probably include some blown appliances, things like that. Seeing the damage again and again, time after time. Here's a gentleman we want to talk about right now. We'll talk about him in the economics section about the smart meters, a little bit more relating to BC, but in this particular case, Gary was in charge of the project for PECO Energy. Gary is quite the guru in the smart meter field. He's quite a plug for Cisco, all these big companies that want to sell all these units to people. Doesn't really care per se about actual safety. He'll talk like he does, but his primary concern is generating profits for shareholder buddies and these companies, and he travels around implementing these projects. Let's shift over to BC. 2 installations, 2 fires, 20 blown appliances at a house. So what happened was they installed 2 smart meters. They installed one, they had a fire and blown appliances. They took it out, they went back and put in an analog meter. Then without the homeowner's consent, again they walked onto their property and put in a smart meter, and they had another fire and more blown appliances, which you can see is very clear right here. More fires. Fire and smart meter knocks out a store's power. They don't know what caused the problem. It's under investigation. I think it's a pretty clear picture right now of what's happened. Wiring burns after smart meter install. This is Nanaimo. 2 2 Home Fires Pro where new smart meters were set up. This is Coquitlam, BC. Sparwood, the post office. Fire happened right there. It's very clear what's happening here. Caught fire Wednesday, several hours after it was installed at the Sparwood post office. Very interesting. Must have been their fault, as the utilities always say. Alberni, smart meter swap out, sparks a fire. Another one in Alberni, fire happens. 1 day after installation. So now we had a few hours after the installation. Now we have announced a mission. Total house destruction happens. Very lucky that people came out alive and nobody was injured, but we have all this damage and emotional stress and trauma for a very sad reason, which we'll talk about later. Gary Murphy is now the Chief Project Officer for the Smart Metering and Infrastructure at BC Hydro. So we can see a very clear pattern happening. Where Gary goes, the fires go. Gary walks around and he starts these programs and fires happen. And it's happening in BC. It already happened in Philadelphia. So if you're out there, you better hope that Gary's not in charge of your project. We can see in Ontario, more smart meter fires. Pickering, Ontario, fire. This is Australia now, fires that are happening. California, pretty clear what happened there. Melted and deformed smart meter. This, we have more fires. Sets of fires all over the place. Georgia, Florida, Victoria, California, Bakersfield. More fires happening everywhere. Why is this happening? And why is it never the smart meter and always the homeowner? We can see here, look at all these situations. I want you to try and remember these as we move forward because we're going to talk about this. More fires. Now we have them in Texas. Totally charred and destroyed meter base, smart meter, absolutely melted and destroyed. An unspecified electrical malfunction in the electrical meter caused the fire. Look at all of these fires that are happening. Here we have huge bank of smart meters spontaneously combusting in an electrical fire. How many people have banks of these meters on the sides of their apartments or apartment complexes? Or even some people have a few outside of their house in these meter banks. Power surge, Palo Alto, California. All these smart meters destroyed. Interesting. None of the analog meters were destroyed in this situation though. We have Chicago, the exact same meter that BC Hydro is using, the Itron Openway meter, confirms smart meters involved in fires. And here's some more of the fires that had happened in Chicago. We have an insurance adjuster, a real threat to the safety of your home. Personally worked 2 large homeowner fires in which the smart meter were determined as responsible for several small fires in which appliances and computers have been destroyed. Blown appliances are happening all over the place. The IEEE, smart meter fire reports from Australia to Canada and virtually all regions of the United States. And this was Cindy Verschoor speaking to Enderby City Council at a presentation to talk about how wonderful the smart meters are. There is absolutely no incidences of house fires being caused by a meter. This is the exact same refrain of all the utilities. The only purpose of this is to foist all the responsibility onto the homeowner and remove themselves from liability, protecting the profits, the shareholders, and the money. This tells us that all the laws of electricity magically disappear exactly and only for the utilities. The laws of physics do not apply to the utilities, they do not apply to the smart meters, and all blame could be put onto you because you never touch your meter base, you never touch the smart meter, so it's obviously your fault, which makes no sense. We have 8-minute installations in British Columbia and really all over the place. As non-electricians taking a 2-week or a short course to run around. They're getting paid commissions for the speed that they go. The faster they go, which saves the utility money on installer hours, the more money the installers get, which finds a way to cover it up for the utilities to make it a faster and more profitable situation. Installing the only device on your grid that's not CSA approved. In Canada, that's a big thing. You want to have all of your appliances, any electrical device. If you have a fire on your home and they find even one device in your home that's not CSA approved, your insurance doesn't work. They violently remove the meters. If anyone's seen these guys pull out a meter, you can see how they jostle and tug it out because they have no regard, because they're getting paid commission to go as fast as they possibly can. And then they violently ram in the new meter as fast as they possibly can to get to the next house. They don't look for anything. They don't even know what to look for. They don't see corrosion. They're not seeing separations. They're actually creating separations. And the biggest problem of all, in my opinion, they have blanket immunity. Never once can they be blamed. It's always the homeowner. So it's always someone else's fault besides theirs. So they can run around doing whatever they want, causing as many fires as they want, and they'll never get blamed. So they say this is the homeowner's fault. You can see on the right-hand side in the lower corner the separation that was caused. This is a fire in Victoria that happened in BC. This was on Check News. Notice the difference. Here's a massive separation on the right side that no homeowner could ever install. And if this fire that happened here was to happen, this would have happened a long time ago if the separation was there. But it wasn't. It was created by the installer and the meter, and this is what happened. When you get this separation, you get arcing. They're also installing these meters under load. No one's told to shut off their power. This is a very dangerous situation, not only for the installer, but now the integrity of your grid, because you get this arcing here, you get resistance, and you get the inevitability of fire at some point down the road. Might be a day later, might be months later, it could be a few years later, but they've compromised the integrity of your entire electrical grid by these unqualified people running around for speed installing the meters. Here you can see what happens when you have these separations and problems with connections. Everything on the left-hand side looks fantastic. There couldn't be a problem, but when you look at the thermal imaging, you can notice where the problem is at 156.9 degrees. Again, same thing. Looks fantastic on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you take a look at it through thermal imaging, you notice you got a very big problem here. This is not something you want happening on the side of your home or anywhere, at any time with any connection. And these guys are making this happen. This is what happens. Arcing. You have separation. It arcs over. It has to keep the connection going, the circuit going. And this causes massive and extremely high temperatures. You don't want high temperatures in electricity and housing materials and building materials mixing together. You need those, you don't want separations, you want tightness so the circuit can continue. Now what you also have on the side of your house is this big ball of plastic that's ready to ignite at a much lower flash point than your metal and glass meter that you used to have. So now we have this thing on the side of your house that's ready to explode at any moment because of the fact of these installations and what they've done. You also have a lot of other problems. Electrical wiring is not sized for the amount of energy that radio frequency and microwave radiation. It simply is not. These are the problems you start having, and this will be happening right inside the smart meter, which you can see on the left. New wireless sources of many kinds are particularly a worry for the new smart meters that produce very high intensity radio frequency energy in short bursts. Electrical fires are likely to be a potential problem. And what are we seeing happening all over the globe? Here's the deal. These meters are receiving 928 million hertz, and that's going to go directly into your grid, and also 2.4 billion hertz from the Zigbee chips. Your grid is operating at 60 hertz. This is a definite issue. You don't want these hertz running through your grid. It's compromising your entire grid, your appliances, everything, the integrity of your buildings, all that stuff. Going right into the very important point. You see these where the top arrow is pointing down into the prongs that go right into your meter base. That's the most important part of your grid right there. Maybe the most important grid on your house besides maybe your water. National Research Council of Canada has found RF accelerates corrosion of materials. Any electrician will tell you corrosion is a primary issue for electrical problems. You don't want corrosion. Corrosion creates resistance. Resistance creates fires, heat. Here's a study that was done at the University of Akron. You can see after 1 week under radiation the massive amounts of more corrosion. So you can think about all the connections, the electrical connections, and more importantly, that exact spot in your household grid. Again, you can see here, this is stuff that's sponsored by the U.S. Air Force Academy or administered by them. You can see all the corrosion that happens. You don't want this stuff. Corrosion causes fires, and this is what we see happening. Microwave radiating all materials of all structures, plus the people inside them and outside of them. So you have not only the meter getting signals directly into it and running all the way through your wiring, you have the routers, you have the other meters communicating to your meter at 100,000, 200,000 pulses a day. These pulses penetrate through the concrete, they penetrate through your roofing and everything. They get into your wiring, they cause issues. This is why we see so many fires as well.